In this video, we're going to look at topic 89, example 1, find all real nth roots. So for both A and B, most of the work has already been written out. I just want to walk through some of the steps and point out some important things you'll need to know moving forward. So part A, what are all the real cube roots of 125? So definitions here, some vocabulary. An nth root of a number C is x, such that x raised to the n power is equal to c. An nth root can be denoted by a radical symbol. So you want to know this term, obviously radical symbol. Index of n would be n radical c, and c is called the radicand. So really what we want to look at is this n value is called an index. You want to be very familiar with that vocabulary word. You'll hear it a lot in the next couple videos, and I'll constantly be referencing an index. So that would be the value that's in kind of tucked away in that little corner there of our radical symbol. The term on the inside is your radicand. Not a word you need to know as well, but it will be good to be familiar with it, and I will mention the radicand every once in a while. But index is definitely a vocabulary word you're going to want to know. Okay, so let's mark that. Be familiar with the index. I'll keep saying it so it'll stick in your minds. So let's look here. To represent the real cube root of 125, write x would be equal to the cube root of 125, and then you would want to find the values of x such that x cubed would be equal to 125. So to solve x cubed equals 125, note that 5 to the third power equals 125, so 5 is a root. All right, so here's what you want to do. Something like this, if you have the cube root, let's say we have the cube root of 125, what you're going to do is you're going to go to your calculator and select the math option. And if you scroll down to option number 4, you see that there's the cube root key, so we can select that. Now, most calculators, if they're kind of updated software, should have this blinking box in here. And you would just type in the 125, hit enter. You'll see that the root is 5, and that would be our solution. Now, a couple things to keep in mind, and you'll see in the next part here what we're talking about. Since this is to the third power, all right, if we look at like x cubed is equal to 125, the third power tells us there should probably be 3 roots. Right now we have 1 root, which is 5, so we need to check the other ones. If you were to do this by hand, and let's say you wanted to make this quite complicated and did not use the calculator, you could factor this. So you would factor, and after factoring, you would get to this step here. This x minus 5 gives you the root of 5, which we already have. If you were to take the other part, this x squared plus 5x plus 25, this is not factorable, so you would need to enter it into the quadratic formula, which gives us a discriminant. The discriminant would be negative. All right, and I know I'm kind of rushing through that a little bit, so I apologize for that. But the discriminant is going to be negative, which means that you're going to have 2 complex solutions. And if you remember, that's dealing with the term I. If the term I is there, those are complex solutions. We're only looking for real nth roots. So those 2 complex solutions are not real. We don't care about them. All right, so therefore 5 is the only real cube root of 125. So for these type of problems, quite simple. Type them in the calculator, but be familiar with how many roots you should have. And you're going to see in part B why that is going to matter. Okay. So again, cube root of 125, just type in the calculator do the work. It is good to be familiar with some common cube roots, like 125, for example, or the cube root of 8, which would be 2. You should get quite familiar with the common ones. All right, part B. What are all the real fourth roots of 16? So now we have an index of 4, and we're looking for the fourth root of 16. So here, the index is 4 and the radicand is 16, so we would write that. We write x is equal to that. They want us to find the values of x such that x to the fourth is equal to 16. So we're going to go back to our calculators. We're not going to go do this the long way. So if I hit math, notice that in option number 5, there's an x as my index. You're going to use that for anything from a fourth root above. All right, so if you have an index of 4, 5, 6, or higher, you want to use option number 5. So you'll select that. And now in that top little spot there where our index is, we can type in the number 4. So the calculator knows we're looking for the 4th root. And inside we're going to type 16, and we would hit enter. So notice that this comes out to be 2. However, there is something we need to look out for. If you were to set this equal to 0 and solve it, so I'm talking the long factoring way down here, you could factor x to the 4th minus 16 as the difference of squares. You could factor x squared minus 4 as the difference of squares. So these two pieces here are going to give you these two solutions, these two real solutions. Notice that we only have one real solution listed if we're doing it with our kind of shorter method. This piece here is similar to the previous example in part A, where it is going to lead to imaginary roots, so we don't care about that part. But because this is a 4th root problem, you should have 4 solutions. We know that 2 of them are going to be imaginary, so if we have another 2, they're going to be the real ones, which, once again, are these 2 down here, x equals 2, x equals negative 2. So my solution back here needed to be positive and negative 2. Here's how you're going to know that. If your index is even, you need both the positive and negative roots. Okay, if we go back to part A, my index was 3. 3 is an odd number, so I don't need the positive and negative roots. I can just stick with 5. However, in part B, we do have an even root of 4, so we would need the positive and negative roots when we use the calculator. The calculator is only going to give you the positive root. If you had the square root of a number, if you had the 6th root of a number, it's the same thing. You would want positive and negative roots, whatever that number happens to be. Okay, so these ones are quite simple. There's a lot of writing here, but you don't really need much of this. All you need to be able to do is use the calculator. So once again, you would go to option, the math drop-down menu, and then you're either choosing option 4 or 5, depending on what your index is, and then go from there. So that's it for this. Be familiar with the calculator, and you'll be good.